Hey everyone, welcome to the AZ-104 exam preparation series. Now friends, when you're preparing for the exams like AZ-104, there are a lot of concepts to be mastered and understood before you can even appear in the exam. Now friends, amongst all these concepts, there is one concept that really stands out, and that is networking and VNet peering. Now this concept, my friends, is not a standalone concept. This concept is actually related or surrounded by many other subtopics, such as we have concepts like IP addresses, we have concepts like subnets, networking in general. So there are so many concepts that come under the umbrella of Azure networking or VNet peering. And do I need to stress more? You have to be really prepared with these networking concepts if you really want to pass the AZ-104 certification. So that's why, my friends, I have gathered some latest and the very important questions around these concepts that we are going to discuss in this video. So let's get started. So here comes the very first question for today. Question number 141, part 23. The question is saying that you have an Azure subscription that contains the following virtual network. We are given with three virtual networks, VNet 1, VNet 2 and VNet 3, and all of these three virtual networks have some IP address range. Let's read them out. So VNet 1 has an IP address range of 196.162.0.0/24. Then we come to the VNet 2 that has an IP address range of 10.10.0.0/24. Then we have VNet 3 that has the IP address range of 196.162.0.0/16. Now further ahead, the question is saying that you need to configure virtual network peering. Which two pairing can you create? Each correct answer presents the complete solution. What are the options given? Option A, VNet 1 can be paired with VNet 2. And option B says VNet 1 can be paired with VNet 3. Option C says VNet 2 can be paired with VNet 3. And lastly, option D tells you that VNet 3 can be paired with VNet 1. Now friends, this is a super important question to understand the VNet pairing. Now see in the question, you can see that we have three virtual networks. Now out of these three virtual networks, we have an overlapping of IP addresses in two of them. What are those two? So we have VNet 1 and VNet 3. You can see that we have one overlapping between these two addresses. You can read that 196.162.0.0/24 and the VNet 3 is 196.162.0.0/16. So these both have an overlapping IP addresses. And just to make you understand, my friend, this part here, which is before this slash, this is called the IP address, and the part after this slash, this is called subnet mask, and that is represented in the CIDR notation. You can also read it as classless inter-domain routing notation. Okay, so now that you understand the situation, we have three virtual networks. Out of those, two have overlapping IP addresses. Now friends, it's very important to understand that whenever you're doing the VNet pairing, always keep in mind the pairing only happens between the IP addresses without any overlap. Now based on that understanding, let's check out the correct options. Firstly, we have option A, which is VNet 1 can be paired with VNet 2. And then the next correct option is option C, which is VNet 2 can be paired with VNet 3. And the reason is same as I just told you, that when you're doing the VNet pairing, always keep in mind that the pairing can only happen between the IP addresses that have no overlap. So here you can see that VNet 1 and VNet 2 does not have any overlap in the IP addresses. Similarly, VNet 2 and VNet 3 do not have any overlap. However, VNet 1 and VNet 3 have an overlap. That's why they cannot be paired. Now let's check out some Microsoft documentation so that we can validate our answer. And friends, here you can see that on Microsoft question and answer forum, someone has asked a very similar question. It says that we have two VNets with the same address space, that is 10.0.0/16 overlapping address space. Now he is getting some error message that is showing that VNet pairing is not possible in overlapping address space VNet. So a very similar question. You can read, of course, the answer given by the Microsoft employee. And this documentation is just by reading the question, you can be clear with the concept that there cannot be VNet pairing when there is an overlapping IP address. And besides this documentation, you can also understand the VNet pairing concept on this documentation here. And this documentation tells you that the VNet peering enables you to seamlessly connect two or more virtual network in Microsoft Azure, and the virtual network appears as one for the connectivity purposes. And of course, you can read the entire documentation to understand what is VNet peering, how this overlapping prohibits the VNet peering, and of course, all the other concepts related to VNet peering or virtual networks. And friends, it really takes a lot of effort to find all these kind of documentation for you so that you can validate all the answers. So please appreciate my effort. You will not find these kind of documentation and explanation in any other YouTube video or any other website where you find these kind of question and answer. So please take a moment to like this video. It just takes a fraction of a second, but it really helps us to grow our channel and keep the content free. Now let's jump to the very next question. Question number 142, a similar kind of question on a similar concept. But friends, before I read the question, I just want to say, in case you're looking for the PDF file for multiple Azure exam series and also AWS exam series, then please check out our membership area. You can of course reach there by this join button. Now let me read the question number 142. It says that you have two subscriptions named subscription 1 and subscription 2. Now each subscription is associated to a different Azure AD tenant. And here the question says that subscription 1 contains virtual network named VNet 1. Then we have VNet 1 contains an Azure virtual machine named VM1 that has an IP address space of 10.0.0/16. Coming to the subscription 2, that contains a virtual network named VNet 2, and the VNet 2 contains a virtual machine named VM2 that has an IP address space of 10.10.0.0/24. What should you do first? Should you move the VM1 to subscription 2, or should you move the VNet 1 to subscription 2? And the third option is modify the IP address space of VNet 2, and lastly provision virtual network gateways. And here you can see, my friends, here we have an overlap of IP addresses. So as I just said in the previous question, if the virtual network has the IP address ranges that has an overlap with another virtual network or on-premises network, then the two networks cannot be connected. But in this case, we do not have any overlap. You can see that this one here is 10.0.0 and this one here has 10.10.0. So this is a difference between the two. Here you can see that this has a 10 and this has a 0 here. So that's why we can easily say there is no overlap between these two IP address space. And this essentially means that you can connect the virtual networks or the VNets by using VNet to VNet connection type. Now here it's important to understand that the virtual networks can be in the different regions or from the different subscription. Here you can see that we have two subscription. So that's why I'm trying to tell you that virtual networks can be in different regions and of course in the different subscriptions. And of course, it's a very important point to understand when you're doing these kind of virtual network peering. So the subscriptions do not need to be associated with the same Active Directory tenant. You can connect the virtual network 1 and the virtual network 2. And for that, you would need to create a site-to-site VPN connection between the two virtual networks. And the first step to accomplish this is to provision the virtual network gateways in both the subscription. And that's why the correct answer for this question is option D, provision virtual network gateways. And of course, I want to add some more details here. Once you have these virtual network gateways, they are provisioned, then you can configure the VPN connection between them to enable the traffic to flow between the virtual network 1 and virtual network 2. And also moving the virtual machine 1 to the subscription 2 or modifying the IP address which is given here of the virtual network 2 is not required to establish the VPN connection between the two virtual networks. So simply moving the virtual network 1 to the subscription 2 is not required, but you may need to create a peering connection between the virtual networks after the VPN connection is established to enable the communication between the virtual machines. And I really understand this is a little bit more of theory, but please understand these concepts are really important when you're doing any kind of virtual network. And of course, you're trying for AZ-104. That means you want to be Azure admin, and these kind of works, virtual networks, subnets, virtual network pairing, these are going to be your day-to-day work. And I have left some more documentation around all these concepts in the description box, so please read them out. Now moving on with the question number 143, interesting question. Please understand it very carefully. It's also around the VNet pairing. The question is saying that you have an Azure subscription that contains 3 virtual networks named VNet 1, VNet 2 and VNet 3. Now the pairing between the VNet 1 and VNet 2 and the VNet 3 is configured as shown below in the following exhibit. Now, how can the packets be routed between the virtual networks? So here you can see that we are given with these small screenshots here. We have VNet 1 pairing, we have VNet 2 pairing and VNet 3 pairing. And further, the question is giving you these two tables here, which are essentially the options given for the packet from VNet 1 can be routed to. So you have to pick one of these options, VNet 2 only, VNet 3 only, VNet 2 and VNet 3. And then we have this one here, which is packet from VNet 2 can be routed to VNet 1 only, VNet 3 only, or VNet 1 and VNet 3. Now first, let me show you the answers. The answer for the packet 1 from VNet 2 can be routed to. The correct answer for this one is this one here, VNet 2 and VNet 3. And friends, the reason here is that the VNet 1 is paired with VNet 2 and VNet 3. That you can see here, that the VNet 1 is paired with VNet 2 and VNet 3. Now coming to this option or this table here, the correct answer for this one here is VNet 1 only. And of course, the reason behind this is given here, which is VNet 2. Now VNet 2 is paired with VNet 1. That's why this is the correct answer. And friends, I really want to talk about the gateway transits here. Here you can see that the gateway transit given in all the three screenshots are disabled. Now I have seen on many websites that they are saying or mentioning that the gateway transit is disabled. Of course, it is disabled, but the gateway transit only applies when there is a VPN gateway created. And just so you understand that the gateway transit is a pairing property that lets one virtual network use the VPN gateway in the paired virtual network for cross-premises or VNet to VNet connectivity, and hence really allows to reduce the cost and administrative effort since only one VPN gateway needs to be managed. And as you can see in the question, there is no mention of the VPN gateway. All that matters is the pairing between the virtual networks, and that is why VNet 1 is paired with VNet 2 and VNet 3. So that's why the packets are routed from VNet 1 to VNet 2 and VNet 3. And of course, for the similar reason, the packets from the VNet 2 can only travel to VNet 1. And of course, you can use the same documentation to understand the virtual network pairing that I used in the previous question as well. And also, in addition to this, you can also read this documentation here that tells you how to configure VPN gateway transit for virtual network pairing. So all the details about the VPN gateway transit and the virtual network pairing is given here. You can also understand this graphic or this diagram here. And as always, I will leave all the links of the documentation in the description box. Now let's jump on to the next question. Question number 144 says that your company has virtual machine hosted in Microsoft Azure. Now the virtual machines are located in a single Azure virtual network named VNet 1. The company has users that work remotely, and the remote workers require access to the virtual machines on VNet 1. Now you need to provide access for the remote workers. What should you do? And your options are option A, configure a point to site or P2S VPN. Then option B is configure site to site or S2S VPN. Option C is configure a multi-site VPN. And lastly, the option D is configure VNet to VNet VPN. And the correct answer for this question is option A, configure a point to site VPN. And just so you understand, a point-to-site VPN gateway connection lets you create a secure connection to your virtual network from your individual client computer. Want to read more on point-to-site VPN gateway connections? Of course you do. And here's the documentation. Here you can understand all about the remote work using the Azure VPN gateway point-to-site. And to start with, you can understand what is point-to-site VPN. Here you can read that a point-to-site VPN gateway connection lets you create a secure connection to your virtual network from an individual client computer. And then you can read this very important point given here that says that the P2S connection is established by starting it from the client computer. And this solution is really useful for the telecommuters who want to connect the Azure VNets or on-premises data centers from a remote location, such as from home or a conference. So these days, my friends, work from home is very common, and that's where point-to-site VPN comes into the picture. So go ahead and read about point-to-site connection in this documentation. And I really can't emphasize more. You will definitely get some questions around VPN pairing and networking in AZ-104. So please clear out your concept. Be very thorough when you're giving AZ-104. And now, my friends, question number 145. The question is saying that you have an Azure virtual network named VNet 1 that has an IP address space of 192.168.0.0/16 and the following subnets. The first one is subnet 1 that has an IP address range of 192.168.1.0/24, and it is connected to 15 virtual machines. Coming to the subnet 2 that has an IP address range of 192.168.2.0/24 and does not have any virtual machines connected. Now you need to ensure that you can deploy Azure Firewall to VNet 1. What should you do? Your options are option A, add a new subnet to the VNet 1. Option B, add a service endpoint to the subnet 2. Option C, modify the subnet mask of subnet 2. And lastly, option D, modify the IP address space of VNet 1. And could you guess the correct answer? Well, the correct answer for this question is, could you guess it? Is option A, add a subnet to VNet 1. And on this documentation, you can understand how to deploy and configure Azure Firewall using the Azure portal. Here you can understand all about the prerequisite, how to set up the network, examine the firewall, create a default route, and you can also understand the other implications such as configure an application rule, configure a network rule, configure a DNAT rule. Then you can test your firewall, how to clean up the resources. Everything is given in this documentation. And friends, I will take some more questions on networking concepts in the next part as well. It's a huge section and multiple concepts are to be covered. So I will devote one more episode for just the networking concepts. And yes, just so you know that in the next video, I'm going to focus on a very latest concepts in networking from Microsoft Azure, and that is Azure Bastion. And in comparison to other networking concepts, this is the latest addition. And needless to say, there are quite some questions coming from this concept.
And yes, my friends, we would love to hear your feedback, suggestions and queries, questions, anything. You can use the comment section below, or you can also email me at connectors@thetechblackboard.com. And of course, my friends, you can check out our other exam preparation series both on Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS. And please do not forget to check out our website, read our blogs, and in case you're looking for the PDF files for all these exam preparation series, then you can check out the community membership or the join button, and you will get the PDF files containing all the questions and the answers for all these exam preparation series. And that's it for today. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.